I feel that we really need to hold accountability at the highest standards with zero tolerance. With zero tolerance. Intelligence Bureau, police, local police, army, CRPF, everybody must be held accountable and actions must be taken, even civil administration. If government now says this meadow was not open, what do you mean not open? Then why did you not stop the citizens from going there for months on? So these kind of nonsensical explanations coming from government are shameful. In fact, they really are, adding salt to the wounds. This is really unacceptable behavior on the part of a democratically elected governments. When it happened, why was it allowed to happen is the first question government is obliged to answer us, the citizens. That's not politics. I as a citizen have absolute right to know why my government has failed. I have elected you to be there in power, and that power must be exercised for my welfare as well, not just for the welfare of those who are in power, those who are rich. But every common man is entitled to be protected by the state, and state, if it fails, then I think I have a right to duty. I have to ask questions, and that has nothing to do about politics. That's about human dignity, human lives. It is citizens' lives. Right to life under Article 21 is guaranteed. State is supposed to protect that life. And if state fails, then every citizen must stand up and ask state that is, please tell us, why did you fail? How did you fail? What will you do so that in future you don't fail?
Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. It's almost 2 weeks since the slaughter at Pahalgam, and my guest today believes the time has come to raise critical questions of accountability, and these cannot be delayed or postponed till the crisis is over. He believes the issues that need to be immediately looked into stretch from intelligence failure and security lapses through to demolition of houses and arrests purely on grounds of suspicion, mistreatment of Kashmiris in places like Punjab and Uttarakhand, and the selective, if not prejudiced way the media has covered the Pahalgam tragedy and its aftermath. Joining me now is one of India's most highly regarded lawyers and former president of the Supreme Court Bar Association, Dushyant Dave. Mr. Dave, you believe we need immediate accountability for the security lapses and intelligence failures that lie behind the Pahalgam terror attack, and that we cannot wait until the crisis is over. So let me start by asking you, can you explain why you hold this view?
Well, let me tell you one thing, and this has been bothering me, and I'm sure bothering citizens across the country, that this is a country where there is virtually a complete absence of accountability for acts of commission and omission on the part of the executive, be it the bureaucrats, be it the ministers, and sometimes even the judicial officers in respect of their functioning. And therefore, there are no questions which are asked, time and again. Nobody is held publicly responsible. Nobody is indicted publicly. We citizens don't know who is really responsible for these kind of failures. So, take for example, the Kargil war. Now, the way the bunkers were allowed to be constructed when the army is supposed to keep a complete watch, and I know personally because my eldest brother was in the army and he was posted in Dras area for a long time. It is it was inconceivable that the Pakistanis could have built the bunkers, and the army was caught sleeping. And then, of course, we fought and we won the war because our soldiers are absolutely brilliant and brave and highly professional, the best army in the world. But then why did such a thing happen? We, today celebrate Kargil Vijay Divas, but we don't ask that question. Likewise, the Bombay terrorist strike. I mean, it was really shocking. And the way it was conducted on the television, the whole thing, and, people died, it was striking at the very heart of India's democracy. Nobody was publicly held responsible. All these issues, take for example, Godhra train tragedy. How is it that the police officials in charge of Godhra and civil officials in charge of Godhra were never held accountable for their failures? So these are issues. Even Pulwama, For example, the lieutenant governor, then lieutenant governor, time and again reminded the country that there was something remiss. We have not held anybody, responsible, and we lost brave members of the Central Armed Police Forces. So these are many incidents which really leave a very serious, bitter taste in my mouth, and I'm sure in the mouths of, citizens, that why is it that we do not hold our executives, our, people who are supposed to represent us, the public servants and the politicians to whom, we give power, responsible for these kind of failures? And why is it that citizens have to suffer on account of their failures time and again, like it happened in, Pahalgam, where we have lost 26, men, but we have lost much more than that. 26 women have become widows. Children of 26 families have been orphaned. The parents of those 26 brave hearts have really lost their sons, whom they loved so much. And, their sources of, employment, livelihood is gone. What will happen to those families? We talk about them now, but we forget them soon after. And we leave them to fend for themselves. So these are issues which trouble us and which should trouble us.
I hear you clearly. I hear the case you're making for accountability. Let's come to the details of Pahalgam and see where you believe accountability is necessary. First, there were several reports of intelligence alerts of a possible attack on tourists. It's in the newspapers on Sunday in the entire country. Second, NDTV claims that the terrorists wrecked the Baisaran meadow a whole week earlier. We don't know what impact any of this had, but clearly, neither the Kashmiri people nor the tourists were warned. Do you believe this is one area where there was an intelligence failure and an inquiry is necessary?
See, there are two serious lapses here. One is not just the intelligence failure, which is very serious. The other is failure of the security apparatus. Karan, unfortunately, we the citizens have in this country become second-rate citizens. We have this so-called VIP syndrome, VIP culture, where these so-called VIPs are guarded and protected by thousands and thousands of policemen. My own estimate is that across the country, more than 1.5 lakh security men guard these people, whether they are ministers, governors, president, prime minister, judges, chief justice, bureaucrats, police officers, army officers. Everybody, is guarded by the policemen, as if, their lives are more important. Of course, we all pray that they live long life and they are, secure. We don't want any one of them to be harmed, much less by these, these wretched terrorists. We don't want these terrorists to touch our leaders. But at the same time, equality is something which runs through the very veins of the Constitution. And therefore, citizens can't be treated in an unequal manner. I mean, take, for example, a simple thing. Today, I had to go to airport to pick up my grandchildren. And it took me almost 2 hours from my house in Golfling to reach airport, because there was not a single traffic policeman. While coming back, I saw that there was a VIP moment in Sardar Patel Marg and the roads were completely cleared with hundreds of policemen standing at every intersection. Now, these citizens suffer and face this every day in their life. So what is really troublesome is the failure of the security apparatus. Why is it that the government of India and the government of Jammu and Kashmir constantly said that there is normalcy in Kashmir, and therefore encouraged us to go to Kashmir in large numbers, and then failing to provide the security at the most important place, namely the tourist spots? While there is massive security around the Lieutenant Governor's house, there is massive security in Srinagar, there is massive security at all so-called VIPs' homes in Kashmir. So this was a singular failure on the part of the government, which is troublesome. With 5, CRPF or BSF boys guarded their army standing there, would have retaliated.
Let me point out just how bad the security at the Baisaran meadow was. There wasn't a single policeman there. In fact, Frontier magazine has pointed out that the only police post that existed at Baisaran meadow was in fact removed in January. Yet up to 2,000 tourists were permitted to visit and wander freely. So in addition to intelligence failure, which you acknowledged in the previous answer, you believe this lapse of security is something else that must be urgently inquired into.
Absolutely. And Karan, whether we like it or not. It's nothing personal. But we must hold people holding the highest positions directly responsible. So the Director General of Police and the DIG of the area are squarely and singularly responsible for this. So is Army, because as far as I understand, in Kashmir, there is a joint command for security, which is headed by the Army. And therefore, the Army commander also owes an explanation to
Oh,
this
forgive
country.
me. The Joint Command is headed by the Lieutenant Governor. Security comes explicitly under the Lieutenant Governor. The Chief Minister, Omar Abdullah, has nothing to do with security. So, when we inquire into the lapses, when we inquire both into the intelligence failure and the security lapses, do we not also need to inquire into the behavior and the response of the Lieutenant Governor?
Of course, we should. I mean, look, we all see Lieutenant Governor. I have been to Kashmir several times in last couple of years, and I have seen Lieutenant Governor's convoy moving at great speed, with 20 or 30 vehicles, and the routes are covered by armed policemen and Central Paramilitary Forces members. So I'm sure we need to protect our Lieutenant Governor, because after all, he is he represents the union in Kashmir. But the Lieutenant Governor cannot be oblivious. You see, just before this incident took place, as far as I remember, the Home Minister Shri Amit Shah himself went to Kashmir to review the security situation.
Days
So,
before, literally days before
correct.
Pahalgam happened.
So what did he review? What did he review? I mean, it is sad that, these kind of failures take place and innocent citizens have to pay a price. There has not been a single attack on our so-called VIP leaders in the country since, I think, when Rajiv Gandhi was last killed. But yet we are spending almost, so much of manpower and machinery and resources to protect them. But we are ignoring citizens
So then we
completely.
also need to ask the question, how effective was the review that the Home Minister did of security in Kashmir days before Pahalgam happened? Because if Pahalgam can follow within 4 or 5 days of the Home Minister's review, that raises questions about the quality and the efficacy of that review, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. It's, and particularly because, Home Minister is perceived to be a strong man. And it's really shocking that he would have missed the basic point that there is no security provided. I have been to Pahalgam several times. I have played golf on the golf course, which is completely unprotected in Pahalgam. I have gone to this very meadow. I've gone to several other meadows around Pahalgam, with my family and my friends, walking around without anybody. And you now realize how dangerous it was, how vulnerable we were. So these people, countrymen are being lured to visit Kashmir in the false hope or false, narrative that yes, everything is honky-dory. You come here and suddenly you find that these attacks take place.
That is the point you're underlining, that the government has been irresponsible in luring and encouraging people to visit Kashmir as tourists when the security simply wasn't able to handle the situation. They were being lured into what turned out to be death traps. That's the irresponsibility you're pointing out, aren't you?
Absolutely. I have, Mr. Prakash Singh, the former police senior DGP, has moved the Supreme Court again and again for police reforms. And unfortunately, despite several directives by the Supreme Court, police reforms are not taking place. What is really happening, Karan, in this country? And this is not confined to BJP alone. This has been happening in, the kind of modern politics that India developed after 1971 when Mrs. Gandhi became powerful, where we are, substituting professionalism with loyalty in appointing high officials, be it in civil side or be it police side, and now even in the army. So as a result of that, we are not selecting the best professionals, and we have them in large numbers, but we are selecting people who are perceived by the powers be to be close to them, who will do what they want them to do.
Absolutely. I take your point completely. Let me move on to two other worrying developments that have taken place in Kashmir. So far, we've discussed the intelligence failure, we've discussed the security lapses, and you've confirmed that these need to be inquired into. You've confirmed that it needs to be done urgently, immediately, and comprehensively. You said we also need to inquire into the manner and behavior and response of the Lieutenant Governor. Security comes under him.
Before you go to the next two issues, I would like to say why I say so. Because we are a democracy. And in a democracy, there is a responsible government which is elected by people. Therefore, ultimately, it's the people who have the power, and the leaders, therefore, have a responsibility that they must, function in an accountable manner. Unless this happens, the democracy becomes meaningless. So that is
Absolutely.
the real purpose of, democracy.
Absolutely. That point is very well taken. Let's then come to two further worrying developments that have taken place within Kashmir itself. First, at least 9 houses of people who are suspected, only suspected to be terrorists, have been demolished without any due process whatsoever. As a result, their families have suffered, their mothers, their wives, their children, their parents have suffered. This is a blatant defiance of recent Supreme Court judgments on bulldozer justice. This is, again, I take it, something that needs to be inquired into. How and why was this done?
See, this, let me say one thing at the outset, and I'm sure you will agree with me, and everybody would agree, that terrorism has no place in, a civilized world. And we must all condemn terrorism, and I do, and I condemn Pahalgam the most. And I really feel so sad about the sufferings of the people, the victims, their families, those who are injured. It's really sad that what is happening. But at the same time, I must confess that you cannot fight terrorism with these kind of third degree methods. It only can breed more terrorism. Now, anybody's child can go astray, and if that child goes astray, the parents are not responsible. The sister or brother are not responsible. What is the point of punishing them and taking away from them their shelter? Because right to shelter is right to life under the Constitution. It is guaranteed. Therefore, you can't, just go on demolishing the homes. You are not really sending a message. It's short-sighted. I'm shocked that, the government is not able to understand that this will breed more, terrorism in Kashmir. The figures which I had seen, and now surprisingly they are being removed. I have seen the figures that after 2014, there was an increased number of local youths joining terrorist organizations in Kashmir. And, that has to be stopped. We cannot adopt, these kind of harsh measures and we have to win over the population. War is not, you are today, by doing this, you are perpetrating a war on an entire population. It's not going to gain any, we must take strictest action against terrorists. We must fight them with all the might and power that we have. But we cannot fight their families in this fashion.
Now, secondly, as many as perhaps 2,000 arrests have been made in the valley, again, entirely on the basis of suspicion. Yet there is no way so many people could have known of the terrorist attack if the government itself was ignorant. Do we need accountability for these arrests, which seem to treat Kashmiri Muslims as suspicious simply because they're Kashmiri and Muslim?
Well, these are all, unfortunately, I would say, knee-jerk reactions to cover up the failures on the part of the local administration. I mean, it was simple that they should have known what is happening. I mean, I've had interaction with the security forces whenever I have been to Kashmir. They are doing a phenomenal job. But somewhere or the other, they are, I think, either not getting the right kind of leadership, they are not getting the right kind of guidance, these kind of lapses are taking place. So for your lapses, you can't hold people at large responsible and go on making this kind of arrests. It will only breed contempt for the state. And the more contempt it breeds, the greater the problems we'll have for future. So I think it's important that you must have stick for the terrorists, but you must also have carrots for the citizens, so that you can persuade the citizens to really come forward and share the information with you, which was happening in good old times. So I feel that yes, some individuals may be involved with terrorists. I have no doubt they were involved, and I have no doubt we have to find them. But we can't find them by arresting Tom and Dick. I mean, Tom and Harry, Tom, Dick, and Harry, and say that, oh, everybody is involved. Therefore, now out of these 2,000, I'll find out who is responsible. No, the security forces should know. They should immediately know that which is the route they came, where did they stop, whom did they, interact with nearby. So, I mean, these are issues with security. Our security forces are really
You made
amazingly.
a very important point there. You said when up to 2,000 people are arrested purely on grounds of suspicion, it clearly also suggests that the security people themselves have failed and they're covering up for their lapses with mass arrests based simply on suspicion. That's a very important point you made. I'm simply underlining it for the audience. Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me. Let's come to the way Kashmiris have been treated outside the state, because that is also equally disturbing. Students in Punjab and Uttarakhand were physically attacked. They had to flee for their lives. There are harrowing accounts about how some of them were seeking shelter at 2 and 3 in the morning at Jolly Grant Airport in Dehradun because they couldn't continue to stay in their hostels. Shawlwalas in Missouri, who were working there for decades, have been forced to leave. Don't we need accountability for this? Don't the government's concern need to be made accountable? They have failed to protect citizens of India.
Well, unfortunately, there is a feeling amongst us that while we want Kashmir to be part of India, while we want to abrogate Article 370 and justify it, we still treat Kashmiris as not part of Indians. And this is the reflection of that mindset that we have. We are now trying to hold all Kashmiris responsible for what has happened. Terrorist, he's a terrorist. He has no religion. He has no race. He has no creed. He has no ideology. His ideology is destruction. And, that destruction has to be met with very strong, measures. But that's not to say that innocent citizens should not be protected. The state had a responsibility. I really wish that Honorable Prime Minister, would have made a statement, a public statement, saying that this kind of treatment to these citizens of one part of the country living in another part should not take place. I mean, these are things which we really should stem at the root and ensure that safety is maintained, the fraternity and brotherhood of men is maintained, to the hilt in every part of the country.
Dushyant Dave, in the 80s, when Sikh terrorism was the real concern of the country, didn't we do the same thing to the Sikhs? Sikhs were mistreated because they were Sikhs. Every Sikh was identified with terror. There were election campaigns carried on by the Congress where they had posters which say, do you want the border to move to your doorstep? Do you trust the taxi driver at night, knowing that all taxi drivers in Delhi were Sikhs? So it seems to be a natural, sad, tragic response of our country. We identify the entire community with a small minority.
Unfortunately, for political parties, be it Congress or BJP, or, minorities are scapegoats. And therefore, they really like to generate this kind of a hatred, as Congress did post Mrs. Gandhi's murder, which resulted in, large number of killings taking place under the watchful eyes of then Prime Minister Mr. Rajiv Gandhi. And now Mr. Rahul Gandhi has said that I feel sorry about it, although he was not born then or he was not around there. Same thing happened, we saw in Gujarat. It has happened in, Orissa when Christians were being attacked. These are things which our Manipur, that is now happening. For 2 years, we are unable to control Manipur. We need to respect minorities. We cannot, this country is born out of, complete mix of races. We don't know what our origins are, where we came from. But we all have, mingled, to become Indians and Bharatiya. And that identity is a common identity which really bonds us together. We cannot allow that identity to be, destroyed by treating somebody as Muslim, somebody as Christian, somebody as a Sikh, somebody as Parsi, somebody as Hindu, somebody, and then, target as, the political masters want to gain some votes. That should not happen. And citizens must understand that they should stand firm against it and remind political masters that we will not permit this nonsense to go on.
Let me raise one last issue with you. Should the process of accountability that you're so eloquently arguing in favor of also cover the way the media has reported and responded to Pahalgam, as well as the way the media has handled associated developments thereafter? For instance, very few television channels or papers have reported the deep and widespread emotional response in the valley to the terrorists. People came out in rallies against the terrorists. Clerics opened their mosques for people who were fleeing because there were no hotel beds available. Taxi drivers took them to the airport without charging for that. There were rallies held by politicians. There was a hartal where every hotel, every shop, every school, every college shut down in protest. But this was marginally covered in the rest of India. We were only vaguely informed of it. And yet, this is something we needed to know. This was a duty to tell us, and they failed. Should this also be inquired into?
Well, it must be. But before I answer that, I have to tell you something more serious. And this is this, that what does the terrorist really want to achieve? He wants to achieve publicity. And we are playing in his hands directly. The way electronics media is going about, talking about this, attack, which should be under complete wrap, 24 hours, every minute, every channel, interviewing all kinds of experts and all kinds of people, having all kinds of combinations and permutations, all kinds of solutions. The terrorist sitting there must be laughing and thinking that, see how I have created a buzz about my attack. No, it must stop. And I'm shocked that Prime Minister Modi, who is so strong, a visionary leader, and Karan, I must say, with all my reservations about Prime Minister Modi's policies, if he fails, this country is not going to really stand up and remain intact. He must stand up and tell everybody that don't discuss this on television channels. These are matters of state security. We are taking care of it, but we will do it quietly. We will do it secretly. You have no business to talk about it. So, terrorists should never be given this kind of a limelight, which it is receiving across the country. Having said that, let me say on accountability what Supreme Court said in a 2018 judgment. It is therefore axiomatic that in a democratic republican government, public servants entrusted with duties of public nature must act in a manner that reflects that ultimate authority is vested in the citizens, and it is to the citizens that the holders of all public offices are eventually accountable. Such a situation would only be possible within a framework of equality. And when all privileges, rights and benefits conferred on holders of public offices are reasonable, rational and proportionate. They don't need 30 cars convoys to protect them. They don't need 500 policemen to guard their houses. We need it too. And I'll give you an example, Karan, of my own experience. And people must realize that when we speak because we love this country, because we have seen what is happening. I had a very intimate experience with terrorist act when it happened in, outside Delhi High Court in 2011. I was just across when the bomb went off. And I told my driver, my clerk Suresh and my junior Yash, that this is a bomb blast. We get out, let's go and help people. We rushed towards the site, unmindful of the fact that there may be a second bomb which might just go off. We immediately looked at the victims. I tried and rang up every officer, every other person whom I knew and whose phone was with me on my mobile. Late Mr. Chaudhary, who was with the Intelligence Bureau, he responded. I begged him that alert all hospitals, tell all PCR vans and ambulances to rush, stop, close the roads so that we can move these injured people, because there were tens and tens of people who were injured. More than 15 people had died. So I begged them, we stop the roads so that the traffic would not come from the Purana Killa side
Where were
towards
the
Connaught.
police? Where were the police all this?
Yes, I will tell you. When I was running there, the policemen were running the other side. I asked them, why are you running? They said, the transformation has burst. So a transformer has burst. So I said, look, if it has burst, let us go and help. Now, Chief Justice Deepak Mishra ordered that the gates of the High Court should be closed. So nobody could come. Luckily for us, two of the very respected lords of Delhi High Court, Mr. Chandyok, senior advocate, and Mr. I forget his name, my very dear friend. Two of them came. Three of us, immediately the PCR ones started coming. We were putting the bodies and, we were helping. And I have no doubt with our help, we could, save few lives. Now, that kind of an experience I have had to see terrorism so closely. I mean, it was the most ghastly scene that I have seen in my life. But having said that, I must say that what is happening today is really not right. We should, handle this with great care, with great, firm hands, but at the same time, in a manner where no innocent citizen is ill-treated by the authorities, be it the army, be it the police, be it the administration.
I take your point entirely. Let me ask you, Dushyant Dave, two more questions before I end the interview. Normally, the process of accountability will be set in motion by the government. That looks extremely unlikely in the present circumstances. So even though we have a case for accountability, a case that is crying out for accountability, who's to enforce it? Who's to implement it?
Well, I mean, if Prime Minister Modi cannot do it, then I don't think we can expect anything out of this government.
But he shows no signs of it at the moment. There's only a promise to do it later.
And accountability must come publicly. I am not one of those who believes that accountability should be in a secretive manner. No. Accountability, citizens have a right to know who has failed and what action is taken against that person. That must be brought. What about, these widow after widow, have you seen them crying? They are all saying that, look, you are giving so much respect to our dead husbands' bodies. But where were you when our husbands were being slaughtered? Have you seen that lady in Surat? I mean, the way she, expressed her anguish, it brought tears in my eyes that yes, the entire state machinery is now trying to, treat the body of the late deceased husband in a manner as if, he was the most important person in this country. He was as a citizen. But when he was dying, he was least important for them. So what kind of nonsensical behavior is this? So I feel that we really need to hold accountability at the highest standards with zero tolerance. With zero tolerance. Intelligence Bureau, police, local police, army, CRPF, everybody must be held accountable and actions must be taken, even civil administration. If government now says this meadow was not open, what do you mean not open? Then why did you not stop the citizens from going there for months on? So these kind of nonsensical explanations coming from government are shameful. In fact, they really are, adding salt to the wounds. This is really unacceptable behavior on the part of a democratically elected governments.
Finally, and I'm asking you this on purpose because I think it's a question you will want to answer. How do you respond to the argument? And many will make that argument after hearing your interview to me today, that by calling for immediate accountability, you are polarizing and politicizing the country just when we need unity in response to the Pahalgam tragedy. People will point their fingers at you and say you are polarizing, you are politicizing at the wrong time. You should have made this call for accountability much, much later. How do you respond to that argument?
No, I think tragedies like this have, two facets or two angles or two, ways to deal with. One is to deal with on a security level where you try to find the perpetrators and take action against them. That's one part of it. The other part simultaneously is to take immediate ameliorative steps so that such an incident doesn't take place, in near future or in distant future. And for that purpose, to ensure that such an incident does not occur, you have to start with accountability. Unless you start with accountability, you can never do this. I mean, it's all right for you now to post, police officers at every tourist site or to say that 180 sites are not now open to tourists in Kashmir. All that is fine. But when it happened, why was it allowed to happen is the first question government is obliged to answer us, the citizens. That's not politics. I, as a citizen, have absolute right to know why my government has failed. I have elected you to be there in power. And that power must be exercised for my welfare as well, not just for the welfare of those who are in power, those who are rich. But every common man is entitled to be protected by the state. And state, if it fails, then I think I have a right to duty. I have to ask questions. And that has nothing to do about politics. That's about human dignity, human lives. It is citizens' lives. Right to life under Article 21 is guaranteed. State is supposed to protect that life. And if state fails, then every citizen must stand up and ask state that is, please tell us, why did you fail? How did you fail? What will you do so that in future you don't fail? Those are questions which we should ask, and there's nothing wrong about it.
Dushyant Dave, I thank you very much for choosing my platform and program to air your views on this critical subject. I applaud you for doing so, particularly when it would be something that would invite trolls and critics to attack you personally. Thank you very much for coming on this program and for suggesting this interview. Take care.
I can only say one thing, that yes, people have a right to troll me, but I would ask those people one question, that had they been outside Delhi High Court on that fateful day, what reaction they would have had? They would have gone and helped the victims, or they would have run away as many of the policemen did. Thank you so much, Karan.
Thank you, Dushyant. Take care. Stay safe.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.